when you're buying food, you should be an informed consumer. Know how much sugar is in the product that you're buying. Know what kinds of fats are in the product that you're buying. Hi, and welcome to another JoyScore podcast. If you've been here before, you know what you're getting into, so welcome back. If this is your first visit to a JoyScore podcast, let me just tell you a little bit about what you're in for, and of course, welcome you to the world of JoyScore. JoyScore is a network of tools and useful advice and media that can help you achieve more joy in your life. Joy is something that is sort of synonymous with happiness, and frequently when people are asked, when I'm asked, are you happy or are you joyful, I have to think about it a minute. I'm usually a fairly upbeat person, so I'm happy. But joy is something that's a little bit more esoteric for me, because I don't often think of my feelings in terms of joy. We are all born with an innate joy in our lives. If you've ever watched little babies and young children, with the exception of when they've got demands that they can't get met, they're inquisitive, they're happy, they're smiling, they're discovering life and the world and themselves. And we like to think that such children are full of joy. And as they get older, as we get older, we encounter life, and life happens. And life tends to throw up roadblocks that get in the way of our ability to perceive that innate joy that we're all born with. JoyScore attempts to objectify that very subjective thing called joy. Through a series of self-assessment tools, you are going to be able to get a sense of the extent to which you're able to perceive the joy that's in your life. Professor Bhupendra Singhal came up with the JoyScore notion, and in looking at life through the years of experience that he had in both business and the classroom as a college professor, he broke our lives down into three domains. There's the mind, the domain of the mind, the body, and the spirit, soul, life force is the third. And each element, or each domain, has three elements that contribute to the joyfulness of your life, and can address deficiencies that you may have that are keeping you from perceiving joy. In the mind, you have actions, thoughts, and stress. There's a number of fitness, nutrition, relationships, wealth, and spiritual notions. Today, we're going to talk about nutrition. Now, before you turn off the podcast and say, oh God, here's another guy going to tell me what I should be eating and what I shouldn't, that's really not what this is about. There are countless diets out there. Any magazine that you pick up is going to have recommended diets and tell you the things that they think you should be eating. And that's really not very practical. It's wonderful to know what you should be eating, but it's more realistic to know what you are eating and what it's doing to you, and whether or not what it's doing is sufficiently negative that you're willing to make some changes. So what I want to do is talk about some basic components of what you eat. Before I get there, just think about nutrition as the gas station. You drive your car. It's very capable of doing an awful lot of things, but if it runs out of fuel, it can't do anything. It just sits there. And the same is true of your human body. The human body is amazing in terms of its ability to accomplish things, very complex thoughts, intense physical activity, and everything in between. But it all requires fuel, and fuel for the human body is nutrition. It is what you take in and what your body processes, the fuel that it burns, to allow you to do the things that you do every day. So you can live without food for a while. People have fasted for as much as 30, 45 days and lived, but they really weren't doing anything during those fasting periods. Similarly, you can live without water for a while, nowhere near 30 days, because your body is made up of 85% water, and you need fluids to replenish the body and flush the system. The other component of fuel is air, and you can live without breathing, depending on how much air you took in, what kind of shape you're in. You might be able to make it for a minute. Maybe you can only hold your breath for 30 seconds. But at some point, before too long, if you're deprived of oxygen, you're going to cease to be living. So the whole fuel component of oxygen, food, and liquids make up what nutrition is all about for your body. The one you really have control over, though, the most control, is nutrition. And I grew up with the food pyramid. I was taught that in elementary school, and I'm sure that many of you have been exposed to the same thing in your educational process. There's a pyramid of things, and at the bottom are carbohydrates, and you go up and you have all the different types of food. And I'm going to go over a few of those things now, just for background, and because there's a couple of, I think, important facts that aren't necessarily common knowledge that may impact the way in which you want to populate your diet. The first thing I want to talk about is sugar. We have kind of an epidemic in the world today, and I think the COVID-19 virus, coronavirus, highlighted our concerns about some of these tendencies. The people that were most at risk for severe impacts of the coronavirus were people that were obese, that had high blood pressure, or that had respiratory problems, heart problems. The obesity and high blood pressure kind of go together and are, although they have disease components to them, they're basically a function of the diet that the people are eating and the nutrition that they are taking into their bodies. So the first thing I want to talk about, again, is sugar. Sugar is in everything. Sugar makes things taste good. Sugar makes foods appealing. Sugar makes us want to go back and have more. So you need to be aware. You should, I think, at least consider what the sugar content of the foods that you're eating happens to be. If it fits what you want to do, that's fine. but you should be aware of the amount of sugar that you're consuming. The average person eats about 150 pounds of sugar a year. That's a lot of sugar. A lot of things when you're measuring nutrition and diet components are measured in grams, which is the metric measure for weight. And a pound of anything is about 454 grams. So keep that metric in mind. When we talk about sugar in your diet, there are a number of things a number of names that basically mean sugar. There's the word sugar. If it's actual sugar that's in the ingredients for whatever it is you're eating, it'll say sugar. But it may also say fructose or high fructose corn syrup. An awful lot of our foods today are sweetened with corn, high fructose corn syrup. Years ago, my wife and I had good friends who had grown up in Nebraska, and they lived on a farm and raised pigs. And we were going to have dinner one night, and had gotten some ears of corn and served the corn, and these folks were kind of aghast. They said, corn is what we feed the hogs to fatten them up. And that statement has stuck with me for a lot of years, because high fructose corn syrup is extracting the sweet component of corn, and it's in almost everything that we consume today. So be aware that when it says high fructose corn syrup, basically that's code word for sugar. A 12-ounce can of soda, Coca-Cola, whatever it is that's a regular soda, not a diet soda, but a regular soda, has about 60 grams of sugar. Now, a teaspoon of sugar is equivalent to about 6 grams of sugar. So if I've got 60 grams of sugar in a soda and 6 grams in a teaspoon, that means each soda that I drink has got about 10 teaspoons of sugar in it. If you drink iced tea, have you ever thought about what it would taste like if you put 10 teaspoons of sugar in a 12-ounce glass of iced tea? That's what you're drinking in sodas. Nothing wrong with it if you know up front that that's what you're doing and that those sugars are a part of your daily intake. But sugar is insidious. It makes us want more. It is almost addictive in its qualities. And so sugar is something that you should approach with a certain amount of awareness and I think a certain amount of caution. The second component of food that we need to sustain ourselves is fats. And there are basically 3 types of fat: good fat, neutral fat, and bad fat. So good fat are unsaturated fats. These are usually oils. It's like olive oil or oil from nuts, almond oil extract. And then there is a polyunsaturated oil that comes from some other types of nuts, like there's corn oil, canola, and safflower oil and things like that. But they're processed oils. The others are more natural oils. The neutral fats are called saturated fats, and neutral fats are fats that are found in animal products and dairy, milk, yogurt, cottage cheese, things like that have saturated fats in them. And saturated fats will have a tendency to increase your LDLs, which is the bad cholesterol. And I won't try to give you the formal name for LDL, but you know you've got two types of cholesterol, the good and the bad. HDLs are the good, LDLs are the bad, and saturated fats will tend to increase your LDL levels. Now the bad fats are called trans fats, and trans fats are in an awful lot of things that we like to eat. They're in a lot of cookies, a lot of sweets, potato chips, and trans fats have the double whammy of increasing your LDL, which is the bad cholesterol, but it also decreases your HDL, which is the good cholesterol. And that's a cumulative impact that is not good for your heart, and it's something that you should avoid. So on the back of the cans, on the bottom of the packages of meat, on the side of the boxes, or on the back of the bags that you are buying your foodstuffs in, there's now a little table that lists all of the components. Now, I don't want to make going to the grocery store a research project, but when you're going to buy a car, you generally want to go as an informed consumer. You just don't walk into the first dealership and buy the first car you see. You've done some homework. You've done some research. You've perhaps explored Consumer Reports or talked to some people that have been very satisfied with a particular make or model. So you're going in as an informed consumer. You kind of know what you want. When you're buying food, you should be an informed consumer. Know how much sugar is in the product that you're buying. Know what kinds of fats are in the product that you're buying. Know what the total calorie count is in the foods that you're buying. And also, when you're buying a food and looking at calories, know what a serving is. If you buy a bag of potato chip and a serving is 5 chips, you're probably doing a lot better than I am if you can stop after 5 chips. So recognize what you're going to be consuming every time you open up a bag of potato chips. So talking about calories, there's a lot of dietary recommendations and a lot of research has gone into how much should you take in. Calories are sort of the measure of what you can get out of the fuel that you're taking in. In gasoline, we talk about octane. The higher the octane, the hotter it burns, and the more efficient it is in the engines. At least in the old days. In the newer cars, there's not a huge difference between the premium or high octane gas and the low level octane. The only real difference from the car's perspective is cost. So when you are going to consume food, calories are the measure of how much useful energy you're going to get out of the food. And that energy is measured in calories. Men generally should be eating somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000 to 3,000 calories a day, and women between 1,600 and 2,400 calories a day. Now, if you're a bigger person, you're taller, more muscular, more active, obviously you're going to need more calories than someone who is perhaps older, more sedentary, less active, smaller frame. So these are all guidelines. They're not rules, they're guidelines. And when you're eating fats, each gram of fat will give you 9 calories of energy. And so a rough calculation of how much fat you ought to be taking in is to take your total calorie count and multiply it by 0.3, roughly a third. So if you're a guy and your diet comes out to about 2,200 calories, you're going to need about 75 grams of fat for your diet. That's about how much you ought to be taking in. Now, when you convert that to ounces, remember a gram is 453 a pound rather is 453 grams. When you do the calculations, if you need 75 grams of fat per day in your 2,200 calorie per day diet, that's about 2.5 or 3 ounces of fat. So if you are eating high fat foods and you get beyond that 73 grams, you're now inputting inefficiencies. So in addition to sugars and fats, your diet should consist of protein, nuts, beans, red meat, fish, omega-3s in certain fish like salmon, particularly good for you. Fruits and vegetables, 3 to 5 servings a day of veggies, 2 to 4 of fruits. Carbohydrates are burned for pure energy. It turns to sugar. Bread, pasta, soda, corn, and desserts. They're nice, but you should do them in moderation. And some general watchwords for your diet: avoid fried foods if you can. When you're cooking, you can steam, stir fry, grill, roast, poach, anything, but avoid the deep frying. The key to nutrition is moderation. You should eat regularly, recommended 3 meals a day. Space them out. Eat 2 or 3 hours before you're going to go to bed at night so your body has a chance to process what you eat. It's good to give yourself a fair amount of time, 8, 10, 12 hours between when you go to bed and when you eat your breakfast. Make sure you drink plenty of water, juices, and eat until you're almost full, not until you're stuffed. If you eat until you're stuffed like we do every Thanksgiving, you're probably eating too much. So nutrition is something that everybody is going to work on for themselves. I will tell you that if you think a little bit about what you're putting into the machine's going to operate better, you're going to feel better, and the more your nutrition supports you, the more joy you're going to have in your life because your body's operating more efficiently. So I encourage you to consider taking a look at some additional information in the book and the website on nutrition. Find out what works for you. Be an informed consumer. Take a look at the labels, and just stopping to think about it will help you make changes that will be very beneficial for your life. So with that, let's wrap it up, and thank you for tuning in. I wish you much joy in your life, and I look forward to talking to you at some point in the future. Have a good day.